Do you believe in miracles? No, I'm not talking about magic tricks or fairy tales, but that kind of transformation that happens when you least expect it. What if I told you that on Christmas Eve, amidst the hustle and exhaustion of the year-end rush, something extraordinary could happen in your life? Yes, while everyone seems focused on gifts and decorations, there's an opportunity to experience something truly meaningful, but few people realize it. You might be thinking, this isn't for me. My life is far from a miracle. But what if the real miracle isn't something you're hoping to receive, but something you can live and transform? Some say that Christmas is just a commercial date, but I want to show you why that idea might be completely wrong. What you're about to hear could change the way you view Christmas, and who knows, maybe even your life. Get ready to discover how, amidst challenges and doubts, a simple gesture can set off a chain of events that will warm your heart and reignite your faith. The story you're about to hear is for anyone who has ever felt disheartened, alone, or hopeless. Are you ready to experience a miracle? Luke was a young man who felt like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, or at least that's how he felt. In the modest house where he lived, the echo of silence seemed louder ever since hardships began to tighten their grip. He had dreams, of course, but life seemed determined to turn them into distant mirages. To outsiders, he was just another face in the crowd. To himself, he was someone struggling not to drown amidst the waves of problems. The small town where Luke lived was one of those places that looked like it came straight out of a Christmas postcard. The streets were adorned with twinkling lights, and the scent of freshly baked cookies filled the air. But for Luke, all that beauty had a touch of irony. While the people around him were celebrating, he was trying to figure out how he would pay the bills next month. It wasn't that he didn't like Christmas, but the brightness of the lights only seemed to highlight the darkness in his life. Even so, there was something almost magical about that place. Neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles, and children ran through the streets, spreading laughter and snow in equal measure. Luke, however, kept to the sidelines, watching like a spectator in a theater that seemed to be staging a play where he had no part. The town was alive, but he felt like a shadow, always present but never truly part of anything. At night, Luke would walk the deserted streets of the town, soaking in the silence that contrasted with the glow of the Christmas decorations. It was in these moments that he allowed his deepest thoughts to surface. He wondered if he would ever find something that made him feel the warmth that Christmas promised to bring. He wanted to believe that miracles existed. But up until that moment, life hadn't given him many reasons to do so. However, there was a thread of hope that he refused to let go completely. Something inside him, no matter how small, insisted that maybe, just maybe, Christmas could bring something different this year. It wasn't a certainty, just an inexplicable feeling that kept him going. And as he walked, his steps echoing on the sidewalk, he couldn't help but notice a distant glow, something that seemed to call him out of his apathy. Luke didn't know it yet, but those silent nights were planting the seeds of something he couldn't yet understand. Christmas, with all its symbolism of renewal, seemed to want to infiltrate his life in an unexpected way. It was as if the universe was conspiring to show him that even amidst pain, there was still room for the unexpected. And so, amidst reflections and uncertainties, he kept going. What Luke didn't know was that the small town held secrets and surprises that could change the course of his story. As Christmas approached, the air seemed charged with a silent expectation, as if something was about to happen, something that would make him look at the twinkling lights with new eyes. It was a cold December afternoon when Luke decided to do something out of the ordinary. Instead of heading home after another tiring day, he chose to stop by the town square. Christmas music played softly in the background, and the smell of roasted chestnuts filled the air. He sat on one of the benches and let his thoughts flow, trying to find meaning in that seemingly mundane moment. That's when she appeared, an elderly lady with gray hair, a warm smile, and a red coat that seemed to match the Christmas spirit. She approached with an almost magical calmness and, without asking for permission, sat down next to Luke. For a moment, he didn't know what to say, but she didn't seem to mind. "Do you like Christmas?" she asked, her voice soft but full of curiosity. Luke hesitated. He didn't want to come off as rude, but he also didn't want to lie. "I think I liked it better before," he replied, trying to be honest without revealing too much. The lady chuckled softly, as if she'd heard the most common response in the world. "I understand," she said. "Christmas can be complicated sometimes, but I've learned that it can also be surprising if you let it." The conversation that started out timidly soon turned into something deeper. The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Helen, seemed to know exactly what to say to make Luke feel comfortable. She shared stories about her life, the Christmases she had spent alone, and how one day she decided to turn Christmas into a time of reconnection with herself and with others. For the first time in a long while, Luke felt he could talk about his own fears and frustrations. Mrs. Helen listened attentively, without interrupting or judging. When he finished, she placed one of her delicate hands on his and said, "You know, sometimes what we lack isn't a solution, but someone to remind us that we're not alone. And that's what Christmas is good for, to bring people together." Before saying goodbye, Mrs. Helen handed Luke a small envelope. "Open it when you feel the time is right," she said, with a look that conveyed both mystery and comfort. Luke tried to protest, but she was already standing up, leaving him with the envelope and a whirlwind of thoughts. He stayed there for a few more minutes, watching the twinkling lights and pondering what had just happened. When he finally decided to leave, Luke felt different. He couldn't exactly say what had changed, but the feeling of emptiness seemed to have given way to something new, something he couldn't quite name. As he walked home, holding the envelope carefully, he began to imagine what the future might hold. Maybe Mrs. Helen was right. Maybe Christmas still held surprises. Back in his small apartment, Luke looked at the envelope on the table. The simple paper and Mrs. Helen's careful handwriting seemed almost to call out to him. He hesitated for a few moments, as if he feared that opening the envelope might change something inside him. But finally, he took a deep breath, broke the seal, and pulled out a small card with a handwritten message. The true magic of Christmas isn't in the lights or the presents, but in what we choose to share with others. Make this Christmas a time of giving, and see how life can transform. The simplicity of the message touched something deep within Luke. He read and reread the words, trying to understand what they truly meant to him at that moment. Along with the card, there was something else, an address and a time. Hope Community Center, 6 p.m. Curiosity mixed with doubt in his mind. Why would Mrs. Helen leave that for him? Was it some kind of invitation? He didn't usually go to places like that, but something in the way she had spoken to him made him reconsider. When the clock struck 5:30 p.m. the next day, Luke mustered up the courage and decided to go to the indicated address. Hope Community Center was a simple building, decorated with wreaths on the walls and a sign that read "Merry Christmas" to passers-by. Inside, he found a group of people engaged in various activities, wrapping gifts, preparing meals, and assembling food baskets. He was greeted by a middle-aged man with a warm smile. "You must be Luke," he said, shaking his hand. Luke was surprised, but the man explained, "Mrs. Helen told us you might come. She has a knack for finding the right people." Luke gave a shy smile and let himself be drawn into the room full of energy and human warmth. Soon, he was integrated into the group and began helping organize the gifts. Amid laughter and shared stories, Luke started to feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. The people around him didn't know him, but they welcomed him without hesitation, as if he had always been part of that place. As the night went on, Luke realized that the words on the card were coming to life. He wasn't just handing out presents or helping with a task. He was sharing something much more valuable, his time, his attention, and in some way his hope. For the first time in years, he felt he was experiencing the true spirit of Christmas. Over the next few days, Luke began attending the community center more regularly. With each visit, he felt more connected, not just to the people around him, but to something greater that he could barely describe. The simple act of helping seemed to illuminate parts of himself he had forgotten, bringing a comforting warmth that not even the Christmas lights could replicate. Among the familiar faces, Luke found inspiration in stories of overcoming challenges. There was Anna, a single mother who organized food baskets with incredible determination, and Pedro, a retired man who used his carpentry skills to create toys for children. Each person there seemed to carry their own light, a flame that fueled the community's spirit. A memorable moment happened when Luke was helping distribute food baskets on Christmas Eve. He handed one to an elderly woman who was holding the hand of a bright-eyed child. "Thank you, young man. This means more to us than you can imagine," she said with sincere gratitude. The child's gaze met Luke's, and in that instant, he felt something change inside him. It was as if all the barriers he had built over the years were falling away. For the first time, Luke didn't see Christmas as a reminder of what was missing in his life, but as an opportunity to create something new, to fill gaps with love, empathy, and generosity. He began to realize that what was happening wasn't just about others. It was also about his own transformation. One evening at the center, Luke met Mrs. Helen again. She smiled when she saw him so involved in the activities and said, "I knew you would find your place here." He thanked her for the opportunity. But Mrs. Helen shook her head, as if she knew something he still hadn't fully understood. "Christmas is a gift you accept by giving. And you accepted it, Luke." Back home that night, Luke sat down at the table and opened a notebook he hadn't used in years. He began to write, not about the problems surrounding him, but about everything he had experienced in the past few days. The people, the moments, the smiles. It was as if he were documenting a chapter of his life he never imagined could exist. As he wrote, Luke realized that something new had been born inside him. Faith. Not just in something divine, but also in the ability to start over, to believe that change is possible even in the darkest moments. For the first time, he felt that he wasn't just surviving Christmas, but truly living it, with all its colors and meanings. The morning after Christmas, Luke woke up feeling different. His apartment, still modest, seemed cozier. There was a new lightness in his chest, as if the weight he had been carrying for so long was beginning to lift. Looking out the window, he saw the city still decorated, with children playing in the streets and neighbors exchanging warm greetings. That's when he noticed something unexpected, a small package on his apartment door. He picked it up carefully, curious about who might have left it there. The wrapping was simple but thoughtfully done. When he opened it, he found a red wool scarf and a handwritten note. "Thank you for warming so many lives this Christmas. May this scarf keep you as you have kept our hearts warm. With love, your friends from the community center." Luke felt his eyes fill with tears. He hadn't expected anything in return for his participation, but that gesture deeply touched him. The scarf seemed more than just a gift. It was a symbol of everything he had experienced in the past few days. It was as if each thread had been woven with gratitude, love, and hope. Determined to give back in some way, Luke spent the day reflecting on how he could continue that cycle of kindness. He remembered something he had always wanted to do but never had the courage. Organize a special night for the neighborhood children with games, stories, and a bit of Christmas magic. For the first time, he felt he had the strength to turn this idea into reality. In the following days, Luke began planning. With the help of the people from the community center, he collected toys, prepared snacks, and even managed to borrow a Santa suit. The event took place on the last day of the year, and the smiles on the children's faces were the greatest reward he could have imagined. As he told Christmas stories, Luke realized he was also telling his own story of how love and generosity had transformed his life. Mrs. Helen was there, watching everything from a distance, with a smile that conveyed both pride and tenderness. When Luke approached her, he thanked her once again for guiding him to that moment. But she, with her calm wisdom, replied, "I just pointed the way. You chose to follow it. And look how far you've come." That night, as fireworks lit up the sky, Luke reflected on everything he had experienced. He didn't know what the future held, but he was certain of one thing. He would never see Christmas the same way again. It was more than a date. It was a state of mind, a reminder that even on the coldest nights, the warmth of love can transform us. As the holiday season ended and the new year arrived, Luke realized that the lessons of Christmas didn't have to be confined to December. He continued to attend the community center, but now with a clearer purpose: to carry forward the message of love and generosity that had transformed his life. For him, each day was a new opportunity to create connections and spread kindness. Inspired by the impact that small actions can have, Luke began organizing monthly activities in the neighborhood. From cleanup drives to paint worn-out walls to reading afternoons for children, he was determined to keep alive the spirit that Mrs. Helen had awakened in him. It wasn't just about helping others, but also about building a united and welcoming community. One afternoon, Luke decided to share his story with the volunteers at the center. He talked about the emptiness he felt before meeting Mrs. Helen, about how the simple act of handing over an envelope had changed everything. "What you've taught me here goes beyond Christmas," he said. "It's about seeing the light, even on the darkest days, and sharing that light with others." Luke's words deeply touched everyone who listened. Many recognized themselves in his journey of doubts and struggles, but they were also inspired by the transformation he had experienced. The community center, which was already a special place, seemed to have become even more meaningful for everyone there. Mrs. Helen, always present, looked at Luke with the same warm smile. In a quiet moment, he asked her how she managed to spread so much hope. She replied simply, "I just listen to people. The rest, Luke, comes from their hearts. You had all that inside you. You just needed a nudge to remember." As the months passed, Luke began to understand that the message of Christmas is universal because it speaks to the most human part of each of us: the need to love, to be loved, and to be part of something bigger. He no longer needed grand events or special dates to feel connected to this message. Every interaction, every gesture was an opportunity to live it. At the end of that year, as Christmas lights began to be lit up again around the city, Luke felt a profound sense of gratitude. What was once just another time of year was now a constant reminder of his journey. He knew that Christmas hadn't just transformed his life. It had given him a new way to see the world. With the arrival of another Christmas, Luke found himself reflecting on the year that had passed. The transformation that had begun with a simple meeting in the town square had grown beyond anything he had ever imagined. His life was now deeply intertwined with the community, and the emptiness that once consumed him had been filled by a greater purpose. Determined to give back in an even more meaningful way, Luke proposed a new initiative at the community center, creating a community library for children and youth. He believed that knowledge and imagination could open doors just as important as love and empathy. With everyone's support, the project quickly came to life, and within a few weeks, the first books were on the shelves. At the library's grand opening, Luke gave a brief speech. He thanked everyone who had believed in the idea and shared how the project symbolized his own journey. "A year ago, I was just a spectator of Christmas. Today, I'm a part of it. This is thanks to each one of you, who showed me that it's never too late to rekindle the flame of hope." As he spoke, Mrs. Helen was sitting in the front row, wearing her usual warm smile. After the event, she approached Luke and handed him a small package. "One last gift for you," she said. Inside the package was a star-shaped pendant, to remind you that light is always within reach for those who choose to seek it. From that moment on, Luke decided to wear the pendant as a symbol of everything he had learned. He knew that more than just an accessory, that star represented everyone's ability to find and share their own light, even in times of darkness. It was a legacy of a Christmas that not only changed his life, but also touched everyone around him. In the following years, Luke continued his work with the community, always finding ways to expand the impact of the initiative started at the center. The library grew, the number of volunteers increased, and the town gained a new sense of unity. Every Christmas became a new opportunity to celebrate achievements and renew commitments to solidarity. Mrs. Helen, for her part, left the town a few years later, but her presence remained alive in every smile and every act of kindness. Luke never knew exactly where she had gone, but something inside him told him she was exactly where she needed to be, perhaps transforming other lives just as she had transformed his. That Christmas, Luke, with the star pendant shining around his neck, looked out at the illuminated town and felt a peace he hadn't known in a long time. He realized that Christmas wasn't just a date or a season of the year. It was a state of mind, a constant reminder that when we choose to love, transform, and believe, we create miracles, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us. Now that you know this incredible story, ask yourself, what can you do to create your own miracle this Christmas? It might be a small act of kindness, reaching out to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, or even changing the way you face challenges. The important thing is to understand that true power lies in your choices. Think about it. How many times have you let the chance slip to turn an ordinary moment into something extraordinary? Christmas is the perfect opportunity to rewrite your story, connect with others, and even discover something new about yourself. Are you willing to take the first step? If this message touched you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this story with your loved ones. Let's spread this inspiration together and transform not just Christmas, but every day of the year. So, are you ready to make a difference?